So I had this really long debate, and I had to deal with Christians on all sides. I mean, they were all spouting biblical verse because they can't speak for themselves, of course. They don't have any kind of like original thought. Um, so I quote mined back, and for every text that they submitted, I submitted the alternate text. So I don't have any of the examples because the page owner erased all that I had retorted with. They would quote, Matthew and say all heathens go to hell, blah 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 blah, and then I would quote the other alternate script and say that you have no judge, judge not lest you be judged, or else you'd be held accountable by the Father, that kind of stuff. And it continued. And then he said, why are you flip-flopping? And I said, I'm not flip-flopping. You guys are fucking blasphemers. You sit there and you go against the very teachings of your Jesus. Jesus didn't say any of those things, probably. I mean, he did say those things, but from, the four Gospels anyway, which all have, like, conflicting accounts and all have conflicting, you know, they all have conflicting script. So I used the conflicting scripts. Every time they would say something nasty, like some form of derogatory judgment, I would pull out Jesus saying, something from Mark. And one of them was, do not say, you fool, or else you'll be held accountable by the Father and burn in hellfire forever, that kind of thing. And they got so angry. They're going to talk about, they pull this quote out of the Bible. It says, non-believers will hate God and, Lamentations, blah, 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 such and such. But they were the ones who were getting more pissed off than me. I was using biblical script, and you figure they would, like, see the error of their ways, but they don't give a shit. All they care about is being right. They don't care about being, like, fair or, they don't believe in equality. They're garbage. All their shit is garbage. Everything that they say is always going to be garbage. It's brain poison, as I like to call it. It's exactly what it is. It's an intellect stealing toxin. I like to call it a disease. And one of the diseases that I've labeled for it is CPS, or chronic pedestal syndrome. With every new follower that they gain, with every new person that buys into their, magical claims, their pedestal gets 1 inch higher. And the pedestal just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. Well, aren't they supposed to be humble? But there's nothing humble about that. That's actually like really arrogant. Vanity. The one thing that they talk shit about all the time, vanity. But they're the most vain motherfuckers on earth. I have never seen people that vain before. There is no atheist on earth that is that vain. We try to point out what you can rationally and logically assert from a natural standpoint has nothing to do against, you say, well, it goes against God. No, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with observing this world as it is. It has nothing to do with the spiritual world, if even it exists. I'm not an asshole. I'm not a mean guy. I'm actually quite cool. I have Christian friends, and I have atheist friends, and I have Hindu friends, and Muslim friends, and, Shiite friends, and Sunni friends, and Punjab friends, and, I can keep going. Punjabi is a language, by the way. And, it's all garbage, man. Everything that you're going to say from any standpoint when it has magical thinking behind it is garbage. And the reason it's garbage is because you interject into intellectual discussions thinking that you're going to be taken seriously when we're not talking about that. We're talking about science or something. Oh, I don't believe in evolution. We weren't talking about evolution. We were talking about, like, astrophysics or something that, or quantum mechanical theory, and then you try to mince it with science, and it's like, oh well, my God says that's the devil's work. Duh. God damn it. If anything, I would think that the universal God would think that science was a beautiful thing. It's free of dogma. Dogma that change your brain to a book. Shit, why would you sell your intellect to somebody else? Why would you sell your intellect to a pastor or a preacher or a minister of any kind? Their pedestal's so fucking high. It's easy. Like I had mentioned to a Christian the other day, I said, why do they pass the collection plate around to a bunch of poor people that can barely afford to fucking pay their bills, while the preacher is up there in his really nice suit, his expensive watch, while he's driving his fucking expensive car around and hardly ever drops a wad into the fucking collection plate? Why doesn't he put money in the collection plate? Why did the acolytes have to do all the paying and the shoveling out of money? Didn't the Jews do the same fucking thing back 2,000 years ago, when Jesus supposedly smacked slapped the Pharisees and whipped them with a stick or whatever he did? He threw them out of the temple, knocked over their change jar or whatever. And you're gonna sit there and talk shit about other people without even fucking remotely considering the things that you're being wholly unfair about. You're very uneducated about your own faith. Atheists know more about the Bible than most Christians do, because the Christians are told to read certain passages. They read the sugar-coated passages, and you're talking about the New Testament Christians. Now, there are Christians that say, well, I would defend the Bible from Genesis forward. Well, if you're going to do that, well, then you're going to have to defend your stance on it. And when people call you out on it, it's like, oh, well, it says in this verse this, and this, but that contradicts everything that happened in the other part of the Bible. And then you have your four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and each one of those are conflicting in certain ways. One says that you use ecumenity to insult somebody. Well, that's cool. And then in the next verse it says you use ecumenity to insult somebody, you're going to hell. So, which one is it? So instead of being full of shit, why don't you just, listen to someone else for a minute? Take their point seriously, instead of, like I always say, listening with your answer running, and trying to sound, like you're special. There's nothing special about you. There is nothing that separates you from another human being or another animal or any of those other things, because the only thing we want is to survive and live comfortably. Well, that's not comfortably. That's not comfortability. When you sit there and chastise everyone else, you're suffering yourself. You are so hurt by other people's points of view that it sends you into these fits of retarded anger. Retardation. That's retardation, when you sit there and reduce other animals and other people to a level below yourself, or below your supposed God, which supposedly loves everyone equally. But if that was the case, there wouldn't be a hell, and there wouldn't be any dogmas to follow. In fact, I think that if a God actually existed, I don't think that we would be aware of it. Honestly. So I think God in that sense is a made-up, fallacious, thing of desire. As Alan Watts wrote a book called The Wisdom of Insecurity, and it's a great book, by the way, if you've ever read it. And I think it was one of his first, actually. I mean, it wasn't his best book, but it did outline, the fact that people are afraid to die. One of the most common things I've ever heard from a dying person is, what are they going to do with my stuff? Well, that could be considered a form of hell right there in its own right. Because you talk about hell as being removed from the side of God, torture, torment, fire, brimstone, burning. Well, there's a burning desire to keep our, like, possessions our own. And when other people touch our stuff, well, that's painful, man. You know, I don't like it when people go rifling through my shit, but I'm not going to sit there and say, well, Jesus said you shouldn't do that. You know, I'm just going to say, dude, get the fuck away from my shit, I'm going to kick your ass. You know, that's just, you know, that's me, though. I'm not a violent person or anything, but, dude, you know, a man's property is his property, just like a woman's property is her property. You know, the Islamic people, they like to take advantage of everybody's shit. You know, if you make an effigy of Muhammad, oh, we're gonna go fucking running wild in the streets, you know. And I'm starting to see this kind of delusional thinking with Christians. You know, they're becoming so delusional to the point of brutality and dangerous thinking. You know, and it's not that it hasn't occurred in other countries. There was a witch burning in Africa a few years back. You know, that's insanity, man. And it's going to start happening here again. It happened like 300 years ago with the Salem witch trials, you know. Um, you just want to push your views, you know, push and push and push and push until the delusional thinking becomes violence. You know, we don't want that in our society. You know, and I've heard it said before, and I've said it myself. Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, he said freedom of religion. But I think he was also kind of hinting at like freedom from religion as well. You know, we shouldn't be forced to believe your shit. You want to push it into schools and bully it past the scientific committees? Well, that's your insanity. You know, you want to push your insanity. It's like a drug addict, man. You experience something elating and you want everybody else to experience that. Well, I understand that. But there's a difference between drugs and brain poison. You can get away from drugs, you can't get away from insanity. You know, you can't run away from that. Or drugs being a form of insanity themselves, but you can say, you know, if you realize that you have a problem, well, you usually try to get away from that problem. Christians don't realize that they have a problem, and that's where the insanity is truly delusional. You know, so I don't want to get down on you guys, but shit, I mean, you give us no choice. I'm not an atheist, but I'm pretty damn close, and you guys are pushing me further and further towards that ledge of just giving up on all the spiritual thinking and all the spirituality that I've gained over all these years that I've lived. You know, and I'm not going to use this magical thinking to explain the natural world around me. This is my personal, you know, philosophy. You know, my personal philosophies have nothing to do with natural processes and all that. You know, and I said to a Christian one day, I said, could it be possible that God, your God, whatever, just set everything in motion and stepped away? You know, he just, you know, created everything and said, well, let it develop itself. You know, and he bought that. You know, he said, well, that sounds very reasonable. And I said, well, you know, but it's unreasonable to think that we're under the thumb of some cosmic dictator. So, you know, just get over yourselves already. And thank you for watching. If you did, have a beautiful day. And comment, like, dislike, whatever.